Well, President and Dean and all of the faculty here, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, and most important of all, graduates or graduates about to be, thank you so much. I do feel, as Colin read out that statement connected to my honorary degree, I felt perhaps a little unworthy, but the words were wonderful and I feel humbled by it. I am so grateful for it. And I also take it as a wonderful recognition of the importance, the continued importance of what I do. In the end, what I do is pretty simple. I'm a journalist, trained as a journalist by the BBC, been a journalist for 3 decades of my life, spent much of that life traveling around the world, all corners of this world, trying to bear witness, to actually report upon what I see. And in the course of the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about what we mean by truth and facts in today's world, because there are people around us who have questioned what truth is, what facts are. In fact, we now have a phrase, alternative facts, peddled first in the Trump administration, but which I think quite a few leaders I can think of around the world would find a quite comforting notion that facts have alternatives and that all different versions of the same event have equal validity. So let's think about that. But before I get into some serious thought, just a couple of observations. It's an awful long time since I wore a gown and sat like you guys are sitting preparing to get my degree, longer than I care to mention. But funnily enough, I have 3 kids at university right now. We have twins, so the maths sort of works. We've got 1 who's about to graduate and 2 who are in their first year of university. And when I told all of them that I was coming to Geneva to receive an honorary doctorate, they all just rolled their eyes and say, "Dad, your advice has been rubbish for the last 20 years. Why would anybody hire you to give them some advice today?" Which is a very fair point. So there's not going to be very much advice in my little presentation, but there are just going to be thoughts, if I can put it that way. And I suppose, as I ponder what Colin has already said, and the theme of today, that is, what constitutes news, what makes news different from the fake variety that we have seen come to the fore in recent times, I'm asking myself, is there a role in the future for independent-minded, fact-based journalism and journalists? Do I have a future or not? So let's think about that. I've just actually come back from the United States, and these phrases that are being peddled right now to question what is called the mainstream media. That's one of the phrases, the mainstream media. What does that mean? Well, in Donald Trump's mouth, it means a sneering contempt for organizations like my own, the BBC, for the big American news networks, whether it be CNN or ABC or all of the others. Certainly a deep loathing for the New York Times and the quote-unquote liberal established media, the Washington Post, even at times the Wall Street Journal, which is somewhat more friendly to him. But the idea is, as he puts it, that the established journalistic institutions have developed an inbuilt bias. Now, he's every right to question what we do, and I question it myself, but I think if one looks at the evidence certainly of the way in which the reporting of the BBC, the New York Times, ABC News in the United States, the way the reporting has unfolded of the Trump administration, I would say that the mainstream media is proving itself more necessary today than it ever has been before. And in a funny sort of way, I'm feeling more optimistic today than I felt for quite a long time, because despite the more confrontational approach and attitude that we've seen from the White House in recent times toward the media, I think it is in a funny sort of way reminding the public of why they do need well-resourced, independent-minded media institutions. And if one looks at, for example, the sales and the online subscriptions that the New York Times and the Washington Post and others have been claiming in recent months, they have rocketed because there is a greater need than ever before to hold power to account, to scrutinize in a way that is not deeply biased and prejudicial, but is simply trying to discover the truth based upon facts and bearing witness. coming back to that phrase, bearing witness, it is extremely important. It's something I've done throughout my career, and I think it's what the best of the mainstream media, with its resources, because it takes resources, it is what we continue to do. So, fake news as a phrase, to me, is simply a way of anybody in power, and let's not just focus on Donald Trump here, but let's think about leaders all over the world, the leaders who sit in the Kremlin, who sit in the great halls of power in Beijing and Ankara and all sorts of other capital cities around the world that we can all think of. For them, for the people in power, fake news has become a very useful phrase to describe all news and information which doesn't fit their purposes, which doesn't suit their interests. And it's an easy way to condemn and dismiss inconvenient facts. And there are, I would contend in this world, still facts, still things that can be verified, things that actually are true. So I will not and continue to refuse to accept that this notion of fake news damns the mainstream media. So that's my first sort of adamant contention in reaction to what we've seen in recent months. And in a way, I suppose what I'm trying to get to is that I think it's time for us all to be a little bit more optimistic. If we look at the way the digital era in which we live works, there are reasons to celebrate. Of course, we see manipulation, we see deception, we see the banks of young people in the Balkans and in parts of Russia who are paid money simply to put out false information on social media platforms and to create viral, quote-unquote, news streams which simply deceive and mislead. But the great thing about the internet, which no amount of autocracy or dictatorship can remove, is that it also provides each one of us, if we are prepared to be diligent, it provides us all with an enormously powerful tool to check, to verify, to scrutinize for ourselves. It gives us more power than ever before. But it does mean we have to take seriously our responsibilities as citizens. And this is where I actually want to get into a word which to me is extremely important in my day job, and that is respect. I think we need to respect ourselves, and we need to think about how we use information, how we check the information that we receive on our phones. The column has pointed out we're all carrying into this room today. And it is incumbent upon us to be extraordinarily careful with the wonderful flow of information that each of us has in our pockets. I respect my guests on HARDTALK by doing an awful lot of research and preparation before they come into the studio. I think it's the least I can do. These are usually people of power and influence in our world. They are people who have enormous responsibilities. They have busy lives. They come into my studio, and I pay them the respect of digging deep into their record so that I can challenge them intelligently and respectfully on what they have done, what they have said, and the way in which there is perhaps a mismatch between their ambitions and the reality. But it is based upon respect. I don't, as some challenging interviewers over the years have claimed to do, I do not assume that everybody, whether they be a government minister, a top UN official, a senior diplomat or whatever, I do not assume that they come into the studio to lie to me. One of my famous BBC predecessors said that his attitude upon sitting down for an interview with a powerful person was to think to himself, why is this bastard lying to me? That's not what I do. I don't presuppose that they're all lying to me, but I do believe I have a duty to hold them to account as best I can, and that means that I am only as good as the research and the thought I've put into that interview. But the other part of respect that matters to me is the respect that I give to my audience. In this world that Colin has outlined and that we all know now, which is about 140 characters on Twitter, it's about instant reaction, it's about 24/7 news feeds that you have on your smartphone, there is a great temptation to move on after 30 seconds of reading a story, seeing a video clip, move on to the next excitement and interleave your desire to find out what's going on in the world with, you know, some pictures of cats doing funny things and, you know, looking at the latest photo album that your niece has put up on Facebook. And all of that is important and fun and attractive. But to me, the respect I give to my audience is to say to them, I still believe that you, consumers of news and current affairs, are prepared to invest 25 minutes of your time into a carefully structured, serious, intelligent analysis of somebody who has power in our world today. It's what we do. You could call it old school journalism, but I believe it's still a form of journalism that there is an appetite for. And that is why, despite everything we have said about what's happening in Washington today, or what's happening in Moscow today, and the degree to which we can actually rely upon the news that comes to us digitally around the clock, that's why I remain optimistic, because I see that Hard Talk, the show that I do, still has a loyal audience in the many tens of millions every week. I know there is still an appetite for this sort of demanding, serious content, because people, in the end, know that they have a duty to themselves to take seriously the world in which they live. And they can only be well informed if they are prepared to invest. And I'm saying they, but I mean we, all of us, you guys who are going out into the world to be diplomats or UN officials or business people or whatever your ambition is to be. Take seriously your responsibility as citizens. Think very hard about the information you receive. Verify it, check it, read around it, dig deep into it, because that is the way that you turn yourself into an effective and truly informed citizen. I think my show just plays a very little part in that process. There are other ways you can find similar powerful sources of information. I'm not going to go into them all now. I'm sure all of you, given your studies, are very well aware of them. But I give you the respect of believing that is what you're capable of and what you will do as you go through your professional lives. To me, as I say, the internet has been an extraordinary time of change in the media, but ultimately I think a lot of good will come out of it. And you know, I'll leave you with this thought. When I began in journalism, I was based in Cairo. I was the BBC's Middle East correspondent. Phone lines in Cairo weren't so great, communication was difficult, and the only way that I could get my TV video packages to London, if I needed to do it really in a hurry and with a reliable line of communication, was to go to the airport in Cairo and persuade a British Airways pilot to take my video to London so it could be on air on the breakfast news the very next morning. Now that is only in 1990, so here we are. I know I'm revealing my age now, but here we are some 27 years later, and I can file video reports from the most remote corners of the world on my mobile phone. I can edit on my phone, I can stitch together the piece on my phone and send it to London in real time. How extraordinary is that? And that is, in essence, the triumph of this technology. It has its dangers, yes it does. It can be manipulated, it can be distorted, but in the end, I would put it to you that for all of our concerns about fake news, that right now is the greatest time for us to be living in a connected world where we have more access to information than we have ever had before. I think it's something we should appreciate, we should exploit, and we should respect. And by respect, I mean take seriously our responsibility to inform ourselves as best we can. So, on that note, I'm mindful of my children's eyes rolling as he drones on yet again. I just wish all of you graduates the very, very best of luck. Make sure that whatever you do next, you do it with your eyes wide open, with all of the information that you have access to made most use of, because in that way you are most certainly going to succeed. I wish you the very best of luck.